Howdy, howdy, and welcome to My Bloody Judy with your final forgets, myself, Zachary Patton Garcia.
And Ian Carlos Crawford. And today with us, our opening kill is...
Hi, I'm Trent.
I'm Devin.
We're Space Cadets.
And we are the opening kills.
Yeah, this is not Space Case.
This
Hi.
is not Space Case. This is My Bloody Judy.
Yeah, and we're on video. Remember that. We're on video this time. So
Yeah.
we're here.
Yeah.
We're here.
And so, how would you want your opening kill to go?
So I know that I would be the girl who is like making out with some guy and I'm like, what was that? And he's like, no, babe, it's nothing. Let's keep making out. And then like, I'm the one that like, I scream, it freeze frames on my face and then the titles roll. Like,
Do you
I don't
really
even
see
make
that?
it past the opening.
You see that for yourself?
Yeah, I don't even see myself making it past the opening credits. I would rather
I
be
just meant
upfront.
like you're the sex moment of it. That's interesting for you. Okay. Cool.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Go on, Trent. How would you die first in a horror film?
You know, I've never thought of myself like dying. Like I would be the killer 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I planned it all along. It was Agatha all along. Like I very much planned the kills. I mean, it would be in a very way where I don't have to do anything. Like I manipulated the whole thing and everybody's kind of killed themselves and I'm just there.
You
That would
killed
be-
Devin. It was you
Yeah.
all along. You
All
take the
along.
glove off, one finger at a
Yes.
time,
Whoa.
do the dirty work.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think maybe
Precisely.
Devin comes back at the end and kills you. That's like the twist.
I would love that plot twist. That
Whoa,
plot
I
twist would
love
be
that.
great.
I never
The
died.
animosity is there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we hate each other.
Yeah.
Classically.
Can't stand
Yeah.
each other. We just pretend to like each other for podcasts and
Very.
performances.
Yeah.
Zach and I too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I understand.
And we also just did an episode with y'all on Space Case. If you want to just give a quick rundown
Yeah.
of what that's going to be about.
Yeah, we
let you
talked
go.
about sort of a lost but not so lost genre of action horror. We kind of talked about its peak in the 90s and 2000s to kind of where it is now. We did a lot of zombie apocalypse stuff. And is there anywhere left to go? Is there things that we can redeem? What the queerness is in that space? What the kind of apparent kink and BDSM kind of overtones are in those movies? And that's what we talked about on
We
our
basically
episode.
talked about Underworld a whole lot.
Which
The whole
A
time,
dream come
pretty
true.
much.
Yeah, pretty much.
So today we're here to talk about what draws queer folks to Final Girls. Like what,
Yes.
I mean, horror in general, but Final Girls more specifically. I figure y'all can go first. Give me like some of your favorite Final Girls.
Yeah.
Evan?
And what you like
Okay.
about them too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I would say the first on my list is it's got to be Ripley from Alien. I remember my dad and I having a conversation about this. My dad was born in the 50s, so Alien came out when he was like 25. And he was like, I was so excited when I saw Alien because it was like there was a woman in this film that had a purpose beyond just like screaming and running through the woods. Like she was resourceful and she was smart and she knew, I don't know, she knew what was up and she knew how to beat the big bad. And I think that that's something I really like about Sigourney Weaver as Ripley is I feel like she kind of, I feel that a lot of Final Girls in movies, like slasher movies up to that point was kind of like there, but for the grace of God, they escaped and they just like run around and scream a lot. I mean, that's where the term scream queens comes from.
Yeah.
And so something I like about Ripley is that like even though she is afraid, I like that she has strategies and she perseveres. Like she's resourceful.
Yeah, I
And
think her
so
fear
I
is like
think-
human, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
of course you're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
be scared. That's
Well, also,
okay.
she's waking up every 50 fucking years in,
Exactly.
Yeah.
fucking movies, so
She doesn't know what
understandable.
TikTok is. That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
She doesn't have
And
time for
also-
TikTok. There's an alien on
Yeah.
every movie.
Exactly.
And then in the second one in Aliens also, I think it's really cool that she kind of has like this maternal aspect with Newt too.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
like beautiful actually. I think it's like actually beautifully done.
Well, and it's not sometimes with like when they like add that kind of stuff, it can be like that becomes
Yeah.
her whole thing. And it's not like her whole thing. She is being maternal,
No.
but like also is like, I'm gonna put on this big fucking metal suit and crush this
Yeah.
alien.
Yeah.
Yeah, get your hands off her, you bitch. Exactly.
It's iconic.
Yeah.
Trent?
It's hard because I'm really like a horror lover. So there's many women in horror that I love. I would say growing up, she's obviously the final girl, but like I actually don't like her that much. But when I was growing up, I thought she was really cool. Was Christy from Hellraiser?
Okay.
Yeah, because really she is like classically, a lot of the times when they're in these horror movies, it's these extraordinary circumstances that most of the time would never happen in real life, very rarely. I feel like for her, it is so otherworldly and fantastical that she is just so overwhelmed, and she is hysterical the entire movie. She's at 100
the
whole time.
Whole film.
And I'm like, that's realistic to me.
Yeah.
Like if I opened this fucking box and these people came and said like, you're up, and I had to escape the whole movie and nobody believed me. And then it turns out kind of everyone was sort of in on it in a lot of ways. And then I'm getting gaslit, girl boss, and gate kept the whole time. So to me, I felt like, and then in the opening of the first movie where they're like, oh, we're going to put her in the loony bin or whatever. And it's like, so she like constantly has to come back and like, I told you so, everyone, which I love because I love when those situations happen. So Christy was very up there for me because I'm like, here's a realistic portrayal of how a woman would be treated in this situation. And I just love Hellraiser. So I liked her a lot.
Absolutely. It's not one that a lot of people say either. Like I didn't even think about that when I wrote it down on my list.
Me neither.
What about you, Ian?
I am basic, and Gail Weathers is forever my favorite. There's a reason I'm wearing this shirt, because I think Gail Weathers is just so like Cordelia Chase from Buffy is one of my favorite Buffy characters. I think there's like they could be related almost, like they're the same type of like, yeah, I'm still gonna look cute, but also I'm still gonna tell you to go fuck yourself. Like I'm not like, you are not intimidating me. And like neither of them are like have superpowers or whatever, but they still like make it. And I don't think I've ever been as worried about a character dying as I was in Scream 4. Like I was like anxious the entire time when I saw it in theater, being like,
wait till Scream 5, man.
And it's gonna happen again. Like
every time they come back with a new one from here out, it's gonna be an anxiety fest.
Because I just feel like a lot, especially horror movies, they love to do that, like bring back old characters. I mean, like, I mean, granted, it was retcon, but like Laurie Strode in the beginning of that really awful Halloween movie, like she's in it for 5 minutes and dies. Like horror movies love doing that.
They do.
And so I'm always worried, like, I love Sydney, but if I had to pick, I'm like, take Sydney, keep my Gail safe. But like, I just always worry about Gail's well-being in these movies because she feels like, maybe not as much to queer people, but I feel like if like a straight person is writing that, she would be the character a straight person kills. Like
you're the crazy fan.
Oh, she's like, she's the mean girl, so she deserves to die. When it's like, no, she's fucking smart.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that aspect. That's great.
Yeah. I think she's such a. There's a lot of layers to Gail, which makes her worthy of surviving. You know, if somebody's gonna go in this one, Dewey's up.
I mean, Dewey's almost dead in every one of them. He should have been dead in that second one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I already know the answer to this question. But Zachary, why don't you tell everyone who you're?
I'm going to give two answers. You know what? Because I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I'm a very nostalgic person, and all of my like absolute loves are very nostalgia based. But recently, I think my most recent favorite final girl is Grace in Ready or Not, with the wedding dress and the gun, and like just great final girl, fantastic. And then my second one is the wonderful Laurie Strode. And I think had Laurie Strode been left at Halloween 1, maybe not, but every time we see her come back, it's just something extra that they add that has like finally just built her up to. She's just perfect to me. There's a picture in when Halloween 2018 came out. They did like a spread in Entertainment Weekly, and there's a picture of Jamie Lee Curtis kissing Laurie Strode's forehead. It's like a comfort moment where they're like acknowledging trauma, and like very powerful image. And that just I have that like framed and everything, and I just love Laurie Strode. I just love Laurie Strode and everything that they do with her every time they bring her back. Halloween 60, we're waiting on it. Whenever they come back with that one.
I was gonna say I actually was kind of torn about saying Laurie Strode too. The first Halloween movie, I will admit, is the only one I've seen thus far. But I think that Lori is very similar to Ripley in that, like, you were seeing a shift, that there were like these resourceful people, like someone that thought ahead, and it wasn't just like by chance they managed to survive.
Yes.
You know, Zach and I
Absolutely.
have talked about that. I don't know if either of you have seen the movie High Tension.
Mm-mm.
My biggest problem with that, there's a twist at the end that's not great. Zach and I do
Mhm.
agree about the twist. But like the whole movie, she's kind of just not, she's just surviving. There's no like action. And that is something that like I can't stand in horror. Like I don't like
Yeah.
if the final girl is like just kind of surviving but not like doing anything, then I'm like, I want a final girl who's resourceful. I want a final girl who's like has agency and like can do things other than like scream and run away.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I
do
want her
think-
there's
to
a
be the
bunch of-
final girl for a reason.
right. Yeah.
Exactly. And I do agree with you, definitely. Like I was, before you even said it, I was about to say Laurie Strode and Ripley. Like I do like link them sometimes. I mean, there would be no. I mean, I guess they could make a way to like link them up and put them in a movie together. But that would be awesome. I would love it. Laurie Strode on a spaceship, you know.
Yeah.
Let her
But as
rest.
queer, yeah, as queer people, we do tend to sort of gravitate towards characters that have like an unspoken queer factor to them. And we kind of talked about that in your Space Case episode. And so, what do you think draws queer people to Final Girls? Just open for everybody here.
We did mention on Space Case, Devin and I had a year where we did a lot of conventions and we kind of toured this panel that was about the kind of bury the gays trope. And so we talked a lot about queerness in film in general. And again, horror came up in a lot of that. I think that there is a overlapping, you could say, sometimes intersectional sort of plight that women have experienced that queer people understand in
That
a lot
sense of being
in,
othered.
yeah, in a lot of different ways. Or again, as we were talking about with Hellraiser, like kind of not taken seriously, gaslit in a lot of ways, or like forgotten and left for dead in some senses as well. And so the last person they're going to believe is this like seemingly vulnerable woman. So I feel like not only is there that vulnerability and softness, but then there's the action aspect of, oh, she's getting revenge on this person. She's taking her agency and kind of running with it. And I think queer people find that really resilient. And we know what that's like in a lot of different facets.
100%.
And yeah, I think again, as far as horror is concerned, they also just are like hot a lot of the time. And in a lot of ways,
we love
like,
a good like diva.
they're over the top sometimes. Like they're very campy. They can be very like hypersexual, sometimes to a fault. But then on the other end, like if that's how you want to feel your strength, you're like, oh, I love this girl. She has like big blonde hair and she wears like really cool clothes or something like that. And I mean, at least again, I'm speaking very personally. Like for me, that's what I'm looking for.
Listen,
Yeah,
Jessica
100%.
Biel in Texas Chainsaw Massacre had the final girl look, and you know that was totally through a male gaze, you know, which can be problematic, and we can recognize that. But still, the low-rise jeans, the wife beater that's like tied up, you know, just showing her midriff, and like it just a look sometimes even does it.
Yeah, when we were talking earlier, when you asked what our favorite final girl was, I think I was going to have another weird pick because I don't remember her name because there's not a lot of dialogue in this movie, but like all the girls in The Descent.
Yes, I watched that last night. I showed that to a group of our friends who had never seen it, and so we watched it and talked about the vagina metaphor and everything. Like,
Zach, can we cover that for My Bloody Judy, or we just watched it together?
We've watched it, but we've never. We did a live stream of it during pandemic.
Yeah, I feel like this word gets thrown around a lot. Like underrated. I think that movie is truly underrated. I mean, what movie that's like horror or horror adjacent that has just 5 women in it?
Yeah.
And the movie has almost nothing to do with the man, except that obviously her husband dies or something in some car wreck at the beginning. And it takes like 2 seconds and they're in the cave. The rest of the movie is just them surviving.
Well, and like that movie,
I can't name a lot of movies.
before we even get to
Yeah.
the monsters, it's like claustrophobic, and like the
Yeah.
one woman like breaks her leg
Tense.
and like
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't come
Uh-huh.
through for a while. It
Halfway
is
through the
about
movie.
like
Yeah.
they really worked on the bonds of those women.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. And then the final girl literally crawls through a shit lake up the cave and out into the sunlight, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, props to her, whatever
Yeah.
her name was. Cause damn,
Absolutely,
very that.
absolutely.
But you were so you mentioned outfits. I wanted to go back to Gale Weathers, because Gale Weathers is surely not dressed like a final girl in Scream 1 with her. I think it's Gucci. It's either Gucci or like
Versace.
Versace. It's Versace.
Versace.
Because I interviewed the costume designer from Scream for the Slayer Fest
nice.
98, because she
That's
was the same
amazing.
costume designer for Buffy, which totally
Mhm.
makes sense, right?
That does make
Taste.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and I just feel like putting Gale in that outfit. I don't think the first. I mean, I don't remember, but I don't remember thinking Gale was a character that was going to survive the movie, because
Mhm.
one, they always like, oh, they're mean, they're gonna die. Like, oh, she says fuck a lot, so she's gonna die. But like,
Me.
no, but like she survives, and she's wearing this fantastic dress for most of the movie, and it's like neon green.
Yeah.
And like those outfits, like that's normally the character that's a target, right? Like she would be helplessly running through, but like that's like another reason I love Gale, because yeah, she's like, no, I want to look cute. Like, I don't care that there's a killer, I still need to look cute. And like, I feel that about being like, well, what outfit do I want to put on? I might get murdered today, but like, we still want to put effort in here.
That's a shirt right there. Like
Yeah.
today, pick your outfit and think, can I get murdered in this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
It's gotta look good. But then like,
Yeah.
you know, I love when a trope is upsettled, right? You know, maybe not having the black person in a movie be the sacrificial lamb, you know,
Right.
like I love when a trope is upsettled, but I never want to see a final straight white male, you know. It's just not fun to me. Very rarely, like there's Ash, which he's great, but like even Ash is, you know, a very queer character. But then like go back to Wrong Turn with Eliza Dushku and whoever that guy was. Had he survived only, it's just not the same factor as like her there as well. Like if he had died and she was there, it has still been like, you know, a great final girl. And so that is, I feel like a final girl is one of those tropes that I just want, you know, I'm okay if it just sticks around maybe. And like, even with the Descent, like maybe just add in a bunch of Scream queens into it and take out,
Yeah.
you know, all the other people.
Yeah, an all-star cast for The Descent.
Oh
I
my
would
God.
live. I love that. Come on.
There were a couple of facets I was kind of thinking about with queerness and the final girl. The first thing, I know maybe this is far-fetched, but it was something I was thinking about, is that I think, at least for some generations, there feels like a tie between being a final girl and the AIDS crisis. It's like,
Mhm.
it's literally a thing of, you are plunged into this set of circumstances you're not used to, and you are powerless as you watch people that you love around you die. In some ways, I feel like it's worse than a horror movie, because at least in a horror movie, they usually just get like a, you know, like a knife, they get beheaded or something and it's done, but you have to
Yeah.
watch the people around you slowly deteriorate.
Yeah.
Well, and in the
But
horror
to
movie, there's like
go-
a thing to fight. It's like a tangible, like
right, exactly.
that's doing the killing. I can chop its head off. Yeah.
And this is almost worse because it's not a tangible thing that you can
Yeah.
fight off. But I think also that kind of just plays into queerness, like as an existence, as an experience. I think that there's a lot about it because it's still not widely accepted that it's inherently traumatic. And I think that that may be why we kind of like the final girls that are resourceful, whether or not there's someone like super like feminine like Gale Weathers, or there's someone that's a little more tomboyish like Ripley. I think there's something cool about seeing someone who is clearly different from everybody else. There's something just like, she's not like, not to be all, she's not like other girls, but she's not. There's
Yeah. It's
something
true, though.
very
It is.
other
Yeah.
about her,
Yeah.
but you get to watch her survive these circumstances without compromising who she is.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think that's an interesting shift you see from like kind of 70s, 80s to 90s. Is I think in 70s, 80s you saw a lot more like tomboyish final girls or like kind of nerds or studious.
Yeah.
Whereas in the 90s with someone like a Gale Weathers or like a Buffy, you're seeing someone who didn't have to compromise who they were to survive.
Yeah.
And so I
Thank
think
you for
there's
mentioning
something-
both of my favorite characters.
Yeah,
And
of
Buffy
course,
really
no.
is like a final girl. Like she's a seven
Right.
season final girl and
I
beyond.
mean,
And
exactly.
Or if you just throw it back to like the like the movie, she
Exactly.
is also like a final girl basically at the very
Exactly.
end.
And
Yeah,
like
how do you
Buffy,
feel about cheerleader Buffy? Do you love like the movie Buffy? No, he doesn't love it.
Ian does not like it. Again,
Okay.
I'm one of those nostalgic people, so
You live?
I
Okay.
have a fondness for it because of that.
Am I making this up? It's not Mary Stuart Masterson, is it? It's not, right?
It's Christy Swanson, who is now
Swanson.
very mad.
Christy's. Oh, okay. I thought it was Mary Stuart Masterson for like
Yikes.
2 seconds. I knew it was like some like it blonde girl from the
Mhm.
80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
I think
gotcha.
there's something in addition to like mentioning that there's kind of a connection between women and queer
Women.
people and women, between women and the queer experience, in that like you're made to feel less than.
Yeah.
But I watched you guys' episode with, I believe it was Misha Oshirovich.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They're
And
great.
something that you guys touched on together was that there's something that a lot of queer people gravitate to, like even gay men will gravitate to, like a diva, because it's not just about
Yeah.
being a woman and being other, it's about embracing who you are and
Yeah.
going through life without compromising that.
Yeah, like
And I think
Lady Gaga is the final girl of the pop
Oh my
industry.
God.
You know?
And I think that's something
Yeah.
that really resonates, is like seeing someone, first of all, who like did go through a trauma and like they're gonna have to carry that with them. I
Yeah.
never saw all of Scream 2. I watched like part of it on TV, but like a big part of it is, I am forgetting the name of like the main character.
Sydney.
From
Sydney, yeah.
Sydney, is that like she's dealing with
Yeah.
trauma from what happened to her in the first movie. And so I think there's something powerful about seeing someone go through something traumatic. I mean, horror is a way for us to explore like our realistic fears through kind of a surreal lens. And so I think in that
We're getting
same...
college level here. Watch
No, but,
out.
like, no,
Be
but like
careful,
I
I've got
think
a
in
third
the...
grade education. I might not follow.
Yeah.
But I think in the same sense, like there's something about these horror movies that you're able to explore some of your fears, perhaps about your queerness, and to go, this person survived these outrageous circumstances and she still got to be herself. Like she was still true to herself and she was resourceful and she persevered. And that means that I can do that too.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I could cry talking about this because the development of both Sydney and Gale in Scream, I think they don't like, it's not heavy handed. It's just like kind of there. And of course it's not, a character exploration. It's still just a horror movie, but they do, like Zach and I, we went through all the Scream movies and you do notice that they do develop both of them in that way. Like they're not friends. And in the second one, when they meet up, they're like kind of awkward and we see that they don't hug. By the third one, it's like, we've been through this so many times. We are hugging. We are cool.
Yeah.
And like you said, in the second one, it's Sydney. They don't try to pretend it's like, oh, yeah, that happened. There was a bunch of dead people. It's fine. Like they
Right.
very much have it like Sydney is dealing with this trauma. And in the fourth one of my favorite moments is like when there's a killer in the house, she tells the teens to get out and she just goes right in and she kicks the killer in the face on a staircase. And like, while that is like fantastical, like I probably none of the four of us could kick a, serial killer in the face. It's
Definitely
earned because like she's been through this so many times that like it makes sense that maybe she would, pick up kickboxing or something, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
for me, that's like it makes sense that she would be like, yeah, I know how to defend myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, especially myself speaking, I love sequels just for that, is that the sequel allows for an exploration of trauma there. And I will welcome any sort of sequel. Even if I don't end up liking it, I will always, after these, trilogy of Halloween movies end, I'm all for like 10 more Halloween movies. I will I will be fine with them continuing it over and over and over again, because I just love to see characters after they've been through something traumatic. And as a queer person, when you don't really have that, like as a young queer person, when you don't really have the words and like the people out there speaking about it, and you don't know how to assign these feelings of like why you're relating to this person, it we relate to the final girl, but then like as a young queer person, I loved the sequels even more than the originals, because I got to see them kind of going through that. And like you said, it's like an exploration of trauma, that we are going through an exploration of our own queerness and our own trauma. And as a young queer person, you can see that, and that's what I would relate to. And I didn't even know why, but that's what I would relate to. And it wasn't until I was even an adult that I understood why. It's like, yeah, I get it. It's that otherness. It's that even in the first movie, you're othered, but then you go into the second movie, and that doesn't mean you're not othered anymore. Now you're othered with a bunch of shit attached to
you're
you.
othered even more. Yeah.
And so it's like watching somebody kind of unpack that and go through that is just, there's something so magnetic about it. I almost want them to just find a final girl and like stick her in an A24 movie, and not even any real like horror happening. Just like watch her kind of go to therapy or something. And just,
I mean, Anya Taylor-Joy in The Witch, she's kind of a final girl.
I was gonna say that is something like an idea. I went to school for TV and film. I love that I like tried to wipe the side of my head that's shaved.
Wrong one, babes. Wrong one.
You want to try it again? We can do it again.
Yes, no.
Another take.
But I think like that's something that I've wanted to explore, is sometimes I think more interesting than seeing someone in the middle of something terrible happening is seeing how they deal with it afterwards. Like, I think it'd be really cool, just like that, to watch a movie where it's like you find out that the main character has been through this horrific thing, but that's not the part that we see. It's like picking up the pieces and continuing to live.
I think there's some films that kind of give like an analogy to trauma. That's kind of like a subgenre in and of itself. Like think of like where it like the trauma manifests into something physical, like The Babadook, or even like It Follows, like where it's like this is following you, and it's like not a real thing, but it is very real under the surface. Yeah, because I think that people really botch the way that people handle trauma, especially like, I'm gonna dox the straight people here. One classic example of a movie that when I was growing up, I was so confused by it, because I'm like, why is everybody so upset? Because I felt like their trauma was not earned. I Know What You Did Last Summer. What? That whole movie is people.
So I totally get it. Oh no, are we talking just the first, or going into the second one too? Are we talking going into the second one as well?
Sure,
or just the first? Okay, because I mean, we have two sections of traumas. Like they go through something in the beginning of the first, right, and then they have trauma afterwards, which kind of made sense. Like you see Julie, like she's really pale and stuff like that, and she's like, it makes sense there. It does make sense, because she killed somebody and she has had to keep the secret. And then going into the second one, everything's like very California filter. Everybody's like bouncy and stuff, but Helen. Sarah Michelle Gellar just died a year ago, and it's like you're not really transferring that.
Was your
over.
best friend.
Exactly.
I never understood it. It's very like the way that they decided that we're bound to each other just because we experienced this trauma, and yet they still have all these problems that teenagers have, where it's like, I don't care about my trauma, I just want to get my license. And I'm like, what? Like, we're like minimizing the stuff. I think like some parts of the movie are obviously iconic, like it's an iconic movie, like regardless, but I'm just like, dang, like, we kind of could have done like something. I mean, Brandy was in there at one point. That's cool. Like, I love her. So I mean, it's fine. The
best chase scene of the movie too.
You sure did. Yeah. I mean, so there's like reasons to watch it, but I feel like as far as like handling trauma in like the most nuanced, like cool way, it's very like, what are you waiting for? It's very I don't know about it.
There's there's a trilogy of Halloween comics that came out at one point, like within the 2000s, and I don't think the third one was ever released, but I had the first two, and it was set after, it was supposed to bridge the first one in H2O, or the second movie in H2O or whatever. And it's really good at going into trauma like that, because we see her having to go back to school, like, which is like immediately after she still has to go back to school. She still has to like face people, and like people know what happened to her, so that others her even more. And she's like starts popping pills, and it's just like more of that, I think, should I don't know, like, because they are redoing, like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, right? So we're gonna see
I've heard,
a
yes.
traumatic event, and then like a period of time later where they're gonna have to deal with trauma like that.
Trent, that
So,
was very
Oh,
heard
no.
of it.
yeah.
Oh no. Yeah, I just got like a really like morbid thought. Like, what if
Okay.
they just get like a bunch of TikTokers to star in it or something?
Oh, please
You know
no,
what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
Addison.
God,
What if it's
no.
Addison Ray? I just learned who that is.
Well, because
No.
I mean, but if you think about the equivalency at the time, like it was like the hottest young actors at the time,
Yeah.
but like it
Yeah.
worked out. But like, think if they tried to do that now, and it's just like influencers.
Oh my
It would,
God. I'd hate
a
it.
dark thought. A dark
I
thought.
feel
Listen,
like
give me KJ Appa in the shower running away from the guy.
Oh my
and
God.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's the cast of Riverdale.
Oh my
okay, I'm
God.
into it.
No,
I'm into it. I'm back.
Now
I'm
we
back.
are
I'm
changing
back.
background.
I'm
No,
back.
I won't do it.
I'm back.
Just as a side note, I feel like the saddest, like the most upsetting, horrifying thing about I Know What You Did Last Summer is not that they killed a guy and they're being like hunted. It's that a year later we come back and like none of them have realized their dreams. They're all working like dead
Yeah.
end jobs and they're doing
Underdeveloped,
nothing.
yeah,
And it
uh-huh.
was like I felt like that was the real horror of the film. Is it's like, oh my God, none of these people left their hometown.
It's like Reality Bites, but with the kill scene.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Love that. Okay.
so sorry. I guess we kind of spiraled down a I Know What You Did Last Summer rabbit hole.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, it's a
Very.
good one though. I mean, like when we talk about, queer, like even if we opened it up a little bit to Scream Queen so that we can include Sarah Michelle Gellar in this, like Julie and Helen, if had they lived a few more years, they'd I feel like something would have happened with them too. Like they had a closer relationship than she had with Ray, or he had, or Sarah Michelle Gellar had with Barry.
Mhm.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
and there's a whole scene with that.
I will say that like I feel like I need to say this. Just I like
Alrighty.
I actually have been working on I was working on like a queer horror that like specifically was like all the horror was a flashback and the like present was like her dealing with all of her trauma. Because yeah, I do think that's like a really interesting story. And like I do kind of agree with Zach that like, okay, the sequels, even if they're not that good, they still like I mean, sometimes they're bad and they don't, but I
Yeah.
like when they do because even take it out of horror, right? I'm always like, whenever there's like a rom-com where it's like, oh, and then they got married, and I'm like, yeah, but like, when did they break up? Like, that's what I'm
Yeah.
always thinking. Like, how long do they stay together?
I think of that too. I'm glad that's
Yeah.
not just me.
Yeah, like literally the
No,
next year they could be
absolutely.
divorced. We don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. I do think it also kind of intersects a little bit or runs congruent to how the media very much these days is still very obsessed with queer pain. They very much love aspects of queer trauma. There is very few pieces of queer media that are just about queer joy. Now, of course, in
Yeah.
horror, that's a great space to talk
Yeah.
about fear, to talk about trauma. So I think as long as queerness is othered, as long as LGBTQIA plus community continues to be marginalized, that
Mhm.
aspect of horror will not change. It will be the place where we explore the
Mhm.
traumas of various communities. Obviously,
Yeah.
we're seeing a
Right.
very much reckoning for the Black community in horror movies. So I think the same. Like I think what will happen, hopefully going forward, fingers crossed, we're gonna find out that more queer people will begin to center themselves
Mhm.
in the horror stories, start writing them and directing them and starring in them, which I know is very slowly happening. I very pay very close attention to my Shudder account. I've had a Shudder account for years, and I watch everything.
Ian,
that's
did you
on
hear
there.
that? Did you hear that, Ian? Shudder.
I know. I
You not
keep
have Shudder?
I
No.
You gotta get it. It's so cheap. It's like one of the cheapest
Yes.
things I have.
literally every time we're recording, I'm like, oh, I should subscribe to Strutter. Oh, right, I should do
Yeah.
that, and I just fucking forget.
I would.
No,
I
do
was.
that
I was
too.
on the test group like 2
Yeah.
years ago when it started the subscription and app. I was in it
Ooh.
because I
All
really
right,
wanted
all
it
right.
really bad because I used to do it on my computer like a boomer. I was like this, like okay.
Yeah.
And then they made an app and I was like very happy about it. I was like, I will give you my money. Like I don't care. But yeah, like I'm starting to see that those projects are popping up and they're being
Mhm.
funded. So
But understand, and it's very important to say this here, is that you have a platform like Shudder that is going to be the future of horror because we're putting it into queer hands and other people's hands. Whereas studios who are still trying horror movies are still doing things that it's like, well, updated a little bit. But like
Yeah.
platforms like Shudder, where you have smaller budgets and smaller movies, they're
Mhm.
getting a lot of talk, a lot of hype, and people are liking them more because we have queer people doing it. With Misha, we even talked with Misha about that and putting more, not just horror films, but romantic comedies and stuff in queer hands
Yeah.
because we can handle it. But also, like when that happens, people got to get out and go see them. You got to give them your
Yeah.
money. You got to get Shudder.
Okay.
You got to support what you want to see.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ian is anti-queer because he doesn't subscribe to Shudder.
Well,
You heard it here
you know
first,
what?
folks.
I'm right there with you, Ian.
The big wigs really are paying attention to Shudder because if you've noticed lately, I guess this is more for Zach, but it's like on Shudder, there's a Shudder TV section where it will just play random things that are on the app, sort of like a TV channel. Now Netflix has a feature that's very similar. So I think the girls are scared. I think that we are going to start seeing
because horror is one of those genres that will make money, right? You invest $5 million into a horror film, you stick it in a theater, you're going to at least get your money back, like probably at least tripled. And when if studio heads aren't going to like do the shit right, then the money's going to go to other movies.
Well, I mean, we talked about this a little bit with Misha. By the way, just for everyone listening, Misha Oshirovich was in Freaky, and they are great. And we interviewed them.
A really great film. Really great.
But like
that was
Freaky,
a great episode too.
Thanks. Like we talked about this with Freaky, but like specifically, there's a line that like one of the police officers, when Misha's character, I can't remember their character's name, but when that character and the other best friend are running away with Vince Vaughn, that's the body, like they're best friends in the body of Vince Vaughn, who's a killer. And the police are like, one is a young black girl and the other is a excited male. And like, you could tell like a queer person wrote that.
Michael
line.
Kennedy wrote it. Like very queer person. No straight person was going to deliver a line like that.
No, like I just feel like a straight person wouldn't have come up with something that is like a line where it's a straight person not knowing how to deal with like describing a queer person. And it was just like shit like that. Like Zach and I both laughed so hard at that line when we watched it together.
Very good.
And like shit like that is just nice to, like, you know what I mean? That wasn't even like, that was a throwaway line, but it was just like nice to like, it felt like, oh, this is a queer person wrote this. You can tell.
Yeah.
The tone of that movie was so fun. And you're totally right. There really is those movies that are handled by people from our community. And I think it's very easy to tell, especially on TV when you start watching some of these queer shows. And it's like, it's what the Oprah and Gail, it's like, a gay friend of mine has never said that. I've never heard a gay person say that. Like, it is very that. I'm not going to dox the show that I'm currently watching right now in season 2, but there is a show that is very much written by straight people.
I want you to dox it.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Ian, you're going to say it?
He's talking about, we are talking about Love Victor, correct?
Oh, yeah. Very much written by straight people, acted by straight people. It is cringe.
Wait, so we got a little in trouble at Slayer Fest because we did a Patreon episode about Love Victor season 1 and talked about how I will say the author of the book themselves contacted one of the people that was on for that episode to say it is not just straight people in the writer's room, and that like we were very incorrect about that point.
Well, that makes me scared just now.
The person who wrote that, you fooled me. You fooled me. But so, okay.
A great example of like the contrast, and now I'm a little worried because if you're queer, just let us know in the comments down below.
If we're saying you're straight and you're not, I'm sorry.
Halloween 2018. So Freaky, we know queer people were freaky. And there's lines like that which are great. Halloween 2018, the comedy in that should have been entirely straight because there's like one scene where you can tell is a straight person writing comedy because they're talking about a banh mi sandwich for like 2 minutes, and that's supposed to be like funny. It's supposed to be funny.
Yeah. Actually, so on that, and this is totally off subject, but not, there's like a joke. So for my Patreon, we're covering, for Slayerfest 98's Patreon, we're covering Harley Quinn. There's a joke in the first episode where like Joker is presented as a terrible person. There's never like romanticizing Joker. I don't know if you two have watched it. It's very good. I'm normally about
I've heard
DC.
Great things.
The cartoon is like queer and wonderful, and
I love that.
But like in the first episode, Joker asked one of his minions, like he's saying that he's the funniest person. He's like, "Who's funnier than me?" And one of his minions says, "Harley Quinn," and he shoots him and goes, "Women aren't funny." And it's like,
I know
so,
that one you're talking about.
yes,
Joker says women aren't funny and then kills a guy.
Confirmed.
kills the
confirmed.
guy. And it's just like
Wow.
so good, like, right? Like, someone in on the
Very good.
joke wrote that, right? Like,
There's a
very.
distinct difference, and you can tell. You can pick it up. So
I would agree wholeheartedly.
so what are some other final girls that you both love?
I actually, one of the ones I was going to bring up, and I don't remember her name either, is the final girl from It Follows. Do you remember her name?
No, I don't. I love that movie. So
Blonde
much.
girl.
Great soundtrack.
Yeah, because I feel like she goes through so much, and I think what I love about her is that like you still don't know whether the monster is really following her or not, or whether she defeated it, but the point is that like what has happened is going to linger with her forever.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Another, I know this isn't like, she's not totally like a final girl, although I guess like people do die in this film.
I'm about to like loophole it too. Like there's
yeah,
this one that I thought of that was like, oh, I loved her growing up.
But like the movie Perfect Blue was something I was thinking of too, that I feel like I know a lot of queer people who love that movie. Is like,
Yeah, that is like a loophole for. She's like the only girl.
yeah, well, like
don't know if I
Mima.
know that.
I
one.
don't know this movie.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's an anime film directed by Satoshi Kon, 1998. It's a pretty short film, like 85 minutes.
Perfect running time.
And yeah, perfect runtime. Packs a
Was
lot
that in
of
the news
scares in
recently?
85. I don't think so.
It should be because that's
yeah,
how we treat
it
pop
always
stars
should be
these days,
because it's an
basically.
iconic film. But
Yeah.
the whole thing is that basically this girl, she's like this super feminine, like she's part of
Yeah.
like kind of an idol group. And she wants to make a transition into acting. And
She's
there's
basically
this
Lady
whole
Gaga.
right, and there's this whole thing of like that she feels like she's not taken seriously. She has like this stalker who's super angry that she's given up the pop star life and is now like trying to do something different that she wants to do. She deals with being like over sexualized, and I don't know, I think it's a really incredible film, and at the end of it you really get this sense that like she has found some level of comfort in who she is, and that she feels more secure in it than she did in the past. And I don't know, I think that's, she's not,
I think this was a loophole for Devin to talk about Perfect Blue, but it's
I
fine.
mean,
it's
it
fine.
No,
was-
I'm
it
like
was-
super
I mean,
interested now. So
yeah,
it was
like-
in the
It's a
news
great film.
recently.
It's a great
Kim
film.
Kardashian just had a photo shoot. that
Oh, and it was so
inspired by that
bad.
one.
It was
Yes.
so
Wait,
bad. That photo
what?
shoot. Yeah.
So it was
she did a
all over the
Perfect
news
Blue
for like a
inspired
week.
photo
Yeah.
shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like they're so bad. Whoever
You know she hasn't seen that movie.
You
You
know.
know someone's like, girl, this movie is iconic. You have
yeah.
to do it.
Oh my god. Yeah. The photo
I'm
shoot
very
was
interested in
horrible,
watching
but
it now, though.
yeah, I
That's so
think
funny.
it's definitely a good examination of like kind of the parasocial relationship between an audience and a celebrity.
That's still very
but
relevant.
also but also
Yeah.
just about like being comfortable in your identity, and when you like shift from one part of your life to another and you choose, like you're like, I not choose, but like you're like, I want to be seen this way now. I do not want you to perceive me as I was before. I want you to see me as how I am now. And a lot of people just refusing to accept that. Yeah, I know I keep bumping into stuff. But yeah, it's not, I mean, people definitely die in that movie.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so like she's not the final girl in like a straightforward slasher sense, but
Yeah.
she is like constantly in danger throughout the film and then survives it all. And you get a sense that she has some like peace and comfort in who she is. And so that one's
Yeah.
really special to me.
All right, I'm
Super
gonna
interested in
be
watching that
I'm gonna
one.
be
Yeah.
the mean one, because I'm gonna say that is a total loophole.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
Very
totally
big loophole.
No, that's valid.
Mine is back to the horror nonsense. There was one again, Final Girl. I don't really think this is a loophole. Like she literally is a girl that survives, and she's a young girl. Juliette Lewis and From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
She has a very big trajectory of being like this kind of timid, like growing adolescent girl. She's stuck with these two fucking psychopaths
Yeah.
in this trailer. And then she like, okay, now we're at the titty twister and I don't know what the fuck's going on. I'm literally 14.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now it's vampires. And
Cool,
she
cool,
shoots
cool.
them up, blows them up. And at the very end, she's just like covered in blood. Like now we're back on the road trip. And
Yeah.
I loved her. In that movie growing up is probably like one of my favorite movies. And I don't know, mine is never like, because I have no soul, I don't really like do the thing where it's like, oh, they grew and they like had trauma. I'm just like, who is the person that like I would want to be in their shoes. And I want to be
Hey,
with
I'm
the
there with
person-
you too. You can
That's
go
fair.
both
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
Any final heroine with a wet haired look? I'm picking you. I'm looking
Yeah.
at you. You know,
It's mostly
Melissa
that,
George in the
so-
Amityville Horror remake. You know, got that
Very.
70s dress on and wet hair, and
I
you right
mean,
there.
the opposite of what you're saying is, I mean, for me is there's have any of you, Zach has not, but have either of you seen The Faculty?
No.
Ugh, it's an fucking iconic like late 90s like horror movie. It's written.
Is it that iconic? I mean,
It
3 out of the 4
is.
of
I
us
can't
have
believe the
not.
3 of you. Listen, y'all are
I
babies.
mean, it sounds familiar. I swear we're probably very close in age, if not the same age.
As a geriatric millennial, I
Elder
love
queer.
this movie. And I loved it when it came out. And Clea Duvall, who is queer, but like
Oh, we love her. Yeah.
Yeah, we
even
love
has
Clea
the
Duvall.
queer energy in like all of her stuff, like before she came out. She
Surely.
plays Stokely, who is like the Hot Topic girl, and she survives. And
Nice,
I
nice,
like
nice, nice.
like for me, it was like, oh, this is the character for me. Like she's dressed in all black, she has like a drawing pad, like she's the artsy
Nice.
one, but like
Mhm.
you know, wears like chokers and whatever. And I always remember it bothered me seeing it, and it still bothers me today, that like after she survives, she's like wearing like a cute pastel outfit at the very end scene. And I'm always like, she wouldn't
Yeah.
wear that. She'd still wear her black outfit.
No, yeah. She'd be
Absolutely.
gothier than ever, I
Right?
think.
Yeah, man. Clea Duvall
Julie,
really
I
was-
know what you did
was
last summer
gig.
in the towel at the end. You know, she's in the towel.
Yeah.
She's fun and flirty again. But we need to talk a little bit more about Clea Duvall. Is it Clea or Clea? Because you said, what'd you say? How'd you
That's
say
great.
it?
That's a great question.
Clea,
I've
right?
heard Clea.
Okay.
Mostly.
She was in The Grudge with Sarah Michelle Gellar, and I almost
Yeah.
wish they would have just given her the reboot. You
Wait,
know,
wasn't she in
I
the
feel like
second one,
she
not
could
the
have.
first one?
She's only in the first one, yeah.
Oh, is she in the first one?
But I almost feel like she would do really well in horror as a genre.
I mean, yeah,
I
she,
think
As a so. filmmaker.
she is good in everything. Again, connection through horror. I'm gonna connect here.
Okay.
So Clea Duvall was in The Faculty, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
And then she also was in the iconic queer film But I'm a Cheerleader with Natasha Lyonne.
Mhm,
Yes.
And Natasha
mhm.
Lyonne was in Blade Trinity.
Ah,
Mm.
okay.
Okay.
They're all
Hey?
they're all connected.
Degrees of
all connected,
separation.
all one
I
movie.
was gonna say-
Yeah. Got it.
I was gonna say, I don't know if they're as interested in the connections. We're not on Six Ed Film Club.
That's
this
true.
Week.
Yeah, I follow Natasha Lyonne very closely since I was a kid, and when I saw her in Blade, I was like, wow, my life is complete.
Yeah.
literally.
I've never seen Blade Trinity, and I had no idea she was in it.
She is very much in it. Yeah, it's more like a glorified cameo because I don't want to spoil too much, but she doesn't last as long as everybody else. So she is in it for like a hot ass second. But
It's
she
the
is
third
in
one,
it.
right?
Remember her
Trinity
in
is the
there.
third one.
That's the third one. Yeah.
Okay,
third
yeah,
one.
that's the only one I haven't
So it's
seen.
got Jessica Biel, Ryan Reynolds,
Okay.
Natasha Lyonne, Parker Posey for our Parker Posey fans. Yeah, she's in it.
Parker Posey is
She's a
also good
great-
in everything. She's one of those characters in Scream 3. I'm like so bummed that she dies. Like
Yeah, Parker Posey is beyond a queer icon for sure, 100%.
my
She's in
my
so
Parker
many good
Posey
movies.
story that I've told on this podcast before is I once crossed the street in New York just to walk next to her for a block. And I had to keep going and she turned, but I literally was like, spotted her from across the street, was like, that's fucking Parker Posey walking with her bike and across the street just to walk near her.
Nice.
And that's it.
Oh, I would do the same. Absolutely, 100%.
I'm still fixated on the fact that I do feel a little bad that I did choose a loophole just to talk about Perfect Blue on
It's
your
okay.
Oh
podcast.
no,
I'll edit it out.
I'm glad you brought it up because I'm super interested in it now.
Yeah, give it a watch. It's great.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
if you ever need 2 guests on an episode where you're covering well, I don't know.
They are a horror
not.
podcast, Kevin. Horror.
Is Perfect Blue not a horror movie?
I think it's more. I would say I would lean psychological thriller.
Okay.
Horror is doing
That's-
a lot of.
that's
That
fixing.
still-
fits. I
that's
feel
still
like that's
horror
okay.
to
That
me.
fits.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
so too. I think thriller
like
and
my-
horror, the line there is very
I feel like my biggest fear is just being a crazy person, and so psychological thrillers are horror to me.
valid.
I-
What about you, Ian? Do you disagree?
Oh yeah, I mean I disagree, but I agree that that is my biggest fear is like being the,
Yeah.
because I usually am the like unhinged one. So like yeah,
Okay.
And we're back.
don't
to
agree with that,
Chrissy.
Zach.
I know.
We're back.
Very unhinged. I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so thank you both for joining us. I guess we'll wrap
Yeah.
up now.
Thank
Uh,
you.
This was really fun. You're both fucking delights.
Yes.
Thank you so
Um,
much. So are
Thank
you guys.
You guys were great too. I mean, yeah. Again, we've spent a lot of time together today, as of now, and
I
that you
know.
didn't end this call early. A win for us.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
So tell everyone where they can find y'all.
You want to go ahead?
Yes. So you can find us on social media at Where Is SK. That's Where Is SK. Of course, on all platforms that are streaming for podcasts, you can find Space Case, and you can also look up Space Kiddettes on there. That's Space Kiddettes, KIDDETTES.
And I guess we never mentioned like what we do.
yeah, hi.
So
Oh,
hi.
yeah. Who are
We,
you? Where you been?
yeah,
What you do?
We're a synth pop band from Houston, Texas, heavily inspired by new wave music, and we also do a weekly podcast where we investigate different mysteries that are plaguing our personal lives.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And just everything else that we
do you
can
want to promo that upcoming appearance you guys got?
Yes.
Yes.
If
I
you-
almost forgot what it was a second time.
Oh my God. If you
For the
live,
second time.
if you live in Houston, Texas, we are going to be doing some Pride spots. There's one that we can't announce quite yet, but the one that we mentioned on our other podcast, we will be playing a DJ set at the Pride block party in the iconic Montrose, which is the queer district of Houston.
The gayborhood.
The gayborhood, if you
Boys
will.
Town.
The theyhood, if you will.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of theys there, unfortunately. But anyway,
Unfortunately.
another podcast.
Yeah, another podcast.
But we are performing in front of the iconic Leather and Kink Bar Ripcord. We're going to do a DJ set. It's going to be really gay, a lot of remixes, a lot of fun stuff. And at 4 p.m. Saturday, June 26th.
Cool. Nice,
Get on it.
nice.
Yes.
And Zachary, do you want to tell everyone where they can find us?
Goodness. You can find us on YouTube at AZB Bonus Features, and you can find us on all social media platforms, SlayerFest X98 on the podcast stuff, pod stuff. Yeah. You want to try it again, Ian?
The pod
You want to go
stuff,
for
nailed
it?
it. Nailed it.
You can find
the
you can find the podcast on SlayerFest 98's podcast stream on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. And you can find us on social media at SlayerFest X98.
Yes.
We'll see you next time,
Thank
everyone.
you guys so much for watching.
Thank you
Have a
so much,
fantastic rest
y'all.
of your week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.